Due to restructuring, your position is being eliminated, Julia announced, not even glancing up from her tablet. 19 years with Northmere Dynamics, and this was my send-off, a sterile conference room with security waiting outside. My name is Patrick Greer, 59 years old, senior financial controller at a manufacturing company that used to make quality industrial equipment before the venture capital boys got hold of it. I'd spent nearly 2 decades keeping those books clean, making sure every number balanced to the penny. "We'll need your keycard and parking pass," Damon added, sliding a cardboard box across the table. "Security will escort you to collect your personal items." I nodded once. Didn't argue, didn't plead. Just watched Julia's perfectly manicured fingers tap impatiently on the glass tabletop. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Patrick?" Her tone suggested she expected tears or anger. Something to make her feel better about what they were doing. "No. Thank you for the opportunity." I stood, straightened my tie, and tucked my leather portfolio under my arm. The same one my wife had given me 15 years ago before cancer took her. Before I'd poured myself into spreadsheets and quarterly reports to keep from drowning in the silence of our empty house. "Human Resources will contact you about your retirement package," Damon said. His emphasis on retirement felt deliberate. We both knew I was 5 years short of full benefits. The security guard, Kyle, looked embarrassed as he followed me to my office. "Sorry about this, Mr. Greer," he whispered as I carefully wrapped my dead wife's photo in tissue paper. "Not your doing, Kyle." I placed my key card on the desk, but kept the leather portfolio close. Inside was a flash drive with 3 years of meticulous documentation. Every irregular vendor payment, every suspicious wire transfer, every suddenly canceled audit. Julia and Damon thought they were cleaning house, getting rid of the old-school accountant who asked too many questions about the new consulting fees appearing in departmental budgets. What they didn't know? I'd been recording everything since the day Julia lost those vendor verification forms, since Damon started pushing out anyone who questioned the new executive expense policy. I walked through the lobby past coworkers who suddenly found their shoes fascinating. 19 years of loyalty ended with a cardboard box and averted eyes. Only as I reached my car did I allow myself one small, tight smile. They thought I was leaving with nothing. I was leaving with everything they didn't want found. I hadn't always been suspicious by nature. The first 15 years at Northmere had been good ones. I joined when the company was still family-owned, run by old Harold Northmere himself, a man who checked production quality every morning before he'd even have his coffee. "Numbers don't lie, Patrick," he used to tell me. "People do. Your job is to make sure our numbers tell the truth." After Harold retired, his son sold to investors. Things changed, slowly at first. Small corners cut, cheaper materials, longer intervals between equipment maintenance. Nothing dramatic enough to raise alarms. Then came the rebranding. New leadership. New vision. Julia arrived from a multinational with a reputation for aggressive growth. Damon followed 6 months later with his talk of corporate culture evolution. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, until the first quarterly review under the new management. "These vendor payments don't match our received inventory," I'd pointed out. Julia had smiled, all teeth. "We're transitioning suppliers. It'll balance out." It didn't, but my follow-up emails went unanswered. Then came the executive retreats. Consulting fees to companies I couldn't find registration records for. Expense reports with duplicated charges that somehow always got approved. I started keeping notes. Created a second set of books, the real ones. Backed everything up off-site. Not because I planned to do anything with it, just because Harold's voice kept echoing in my head. Numbers don't lie. Meanwhile, the workplace changed. Younger employees with connections to Julia or Damon got promoted. Veteran staff found themselves reassigned or pushed toward early retirement. Greg from purchasing stopped by my office after he found invoice discrepancies. "Something's not right, Patrick," he'd whispered. 2 weeks later, Greg was gone. Performance issues, according to the announcement. My daughter Ellie noticed the change in me. "You're working late every night, Dad. What's going on?" I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Ellie had just made partner at her law firm. She didn't need my problems. "Just busy season," I'd lied. But last month, when Damon reorganized the finance department, placing his inexperienced nephew between me and all executive financial approvals, I knew my time was running short. So I made copies, secured evidence, created a timeline of every questionable transaction, every policy change that removed financial safeguards. Not because I wanted revenge, because someone needed to remember what Harold had taught us. Numbers don't lie. The reality of my situation hit me fully as I pulled into my driveway that afternoon. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I had nowhere to be tomorrow morning. No reports to review, no month-end close to prepare for. I sat in my car for a long time, just staring at my front door. My house felt different, emptier somehow. Though nothing had changed, I placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured myself 2 fingers of the whiskey I kept for special occasions. This qualified, I supposed, though not in the way I'd imagined my career ending. The phone rang. "Dad? Tina from accounting just called me. She said you were let go. What happened?" I gave her the sanitized version. Restructuring. Position eliminated. Standard corporate speak. "That's bull," my daughter said, lawyer instincts flaring. "They can't do that after 19 years without cause. We should file." "No," I cut her off gently. "No lawsuits." "But Dad." "Trust me on this, Ellie." I took a slow sip of whiskey. Some battles aren't fought in courtrooms. After we hung up, I went to my home office and powered up the computer. The flash drive from my portfolio contained everything, organized by date, incident type, and dollar amount. 3 years of financial manipulation, neatly cataloged with supporting evidence. I opened a new document and began typing. Not an angry letter, not a threat, just a clear, factual summary of what I'd observed. Times, dates, amounts. The email addresses at the Securities and Exchange Commission and the State Attorney's Office waited in the recipient field. My finger hovered over the send button. Was I really going to do this? These weren't just spreadsheet errors or honest mistakes. This was deliberate financial misconduct. People would lose jobs, maybe face charges. The company Harold built could collapse. I closed the laptop without sending anything. Instead, I found myself pulling out a dusty photo album. Pictures of Harold's retirement party. The old team. My late wife standing beside me at the company picnic. Both of us younger, unaware of the cancer already growing inside her. "What would you do, Diane?" I whispered to her photograph. I already knew the answer. Diane never tolerated dishonesty. "Do what's right," she would have said. "Everything else is just noise." I slept poorly that night. By morning, something had changed inside me. The fog of shock had cleared, replaced by a cold clarity. This wasn't about my job anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about Harold's legacy, about the vendors being cheated, about the employees who would eventually pay the price for executive greed. I made coffee, straightened my tie out of 19 years of habit, and picked up the phone. "James, it's Patrick Greer. I need to talk to you about some financial irregularities at Northmere Dynamics." "Yes, it's extensive. Can we meet today?" James Parker had been my roommate in college. Now, he was a federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. The first move had been made. 3 days after meeting with James, I received a certified letter from Northmere's legal department. The severance package they generously prepared required my signature on a confidentiality agreement that would prevent me from discussing any aspect of company operations, past, present, or future. The dollar amount was insultingly low. 3 months, salary for 19 years of service. I called Ellie for legal advice. "They're worried about something," she said after reviewing the document. "Way beyond standard non-disclosure terms. What happens if I don't sign?" They're threatening to contest your unemployment benefits and withhold payment for unused vacation time. Her voice hardened. Legally shaky, but they're betting you won't have the resources to fight it. I thanked her and promised to think it over. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already decided. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang. Julia stood on my porch, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Patrick," she said warmly, as if we were old friends. "May I come in? I wanted to personally check how you're doing." I let her into my living room, but didn't offer refreshments. "The severance paperwork," she said, placing a fresh copy on my coffee table. "There was a misunderstanding. We can offer an additional 2 months if you sign today." "What's the rush?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Her smile tightened. "The board is finalizing next quarter's budget. We need to close out all pending financial obligations. Like properly paying vendors." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Something flickered in her eyes. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The Westbrook invoices," I said carefully. "The ones that showed up in the system without inventory receipts." "Clerical errors," she replied smoothly. "Already addressed." "And the consulting payments to Everite Partners, the company that shares an address with your brother-in-law's home office?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Julia's smile vanished completely. "I'd be careful with accusations, Patrick, especially unfounded ones that could be construed as defamatory." Her voice had lost all pretense of warmth. "Did you remove any company documents when you left? Because that would constitute theft." "I kept copies of my work product, as permitted in the employee handbook," I replied truthfully. She stood abruptly. "I'll give you until tomorrow to reconsider the severance offer. After that, things might become complicated for your retirement planning." After she left, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Back off if you know what's good for you. We know about the flash drive." That evening, I noticed a car parked across from my house. It was still there the next morning. By afternoon, my bank called. Someone had attempted to access my accounts using my social security number, but with incorrect passwords. When I checked my email, dozens of subscription confirmations flooded my inbox. Services I'd never signed up for, all requiring immediate payment. It was clear they were sending a message. They could make my life difficult. They could destroy my credit. They could watch my house. I called James again. "They're pushing back," I told him. "Hard." "Expected," he replied calmly. "But concerning. It suggests there's more than just sloppy bookkeeping. Forward me everything. The severance offer, the text, the unauthorized access attempts. Document the surveillance. What about my evidence? Is it enough?" His pause told me everything. "It's compelling, Patrick, but corporations like Northmere have battalions of lawyers who will claim these are isolated incidents or accounting errors. We need more. Someone on the inside." I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. They were watching me, pressuring me, and I didn't have enough ammunition to fight back. Not yet, anyway. A week after Julia's visit, I received a call from my old assistant, Teresa. Her voice was hushed, nervous. "Can we meet somewhere?" "Not in public. Not at your house." We arranged to meet at my brother's cabin, an hour outside St. Louis. He was in Florida for the winter. The place would be empty. Teresa arrived looking exhausted, constantly checking her rearview mirror as she pulled in. "They're doing a full audit," she said without preamble once we were inside. "But it's not a real audit. They're changing records, Patrick, backdating approvals, creating paper trails that never existed." "How do you know this?" "They brought in consultants from Damon's old firm. They don't know I can access the system logs. They still have me using your old credentials." She pulled out a flash drive. "I've been documenting everything, the before and after." I stared at the tiny device. "You're risking your job. They're already planning to eliminate my position next month." Her laugh was bitter. "Found that out when they accidentally copied me on the restructuring email." What Teresa showed me went far beyond what I'd suspected. This wasn't just creative accounting or inflated executive perks. Northmere had been systematically overcharging government contracts, falsifying certification documents for parts that didn't meet safety standards, and recording phantom inventory to inflate company valuation. "There's more," Teresa said, pulling up an email chain. "They're preparing to sell the manufacturing division to a private equity group. The employees won't know until it's done." "The pension fund?" Her expression confirmed my worst fears. "They've been borrowing from it for over a year. If the sale goes through, there won't be enough to cover obligations. Hundreds of families, retirement plans built over decades, all at risk. Who else knows about this? Just the executive team, and now you." She hesitated. "And someone else, I think? Drew from Quality Control started asking questions last month. He disappeared a week before you did." "Fired?" "That's the thing. There's no termination paperwork. His employee file shows he resigned, but his badge was never turned in, and his desk was cleared out overnight." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Have you heard from him?" "No. His phone goes straight to voicemail." On the drive home, I couldn't shake the sense that we were dealing with something darker than financial fraud. The surveillance car was gone from my street when I returned, but somehow that didn't reassure me. I called Drew's number. Straight to voicemail, as Teresa had said. I left a vague message about connecting over professional opportunities. Then I called James again. "We need to move faster," I told him, explaining what Teresa had shared. "This changes things," he agreed. "The pension fund angle elevates this significantly. I'll speak with my superiors tomorrow." "But Patrick?" He paused. "Be careful. If they're manipulating records on this scale, they're desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Drew, about Harold Northmere, who'd trusted me to keep his company's finances honest, about the machine operators and warehouse staff who'd put in decades of service, counting on pensions that were being drained away. At 2 a.m., my security system alerted me to movement in my backyard. By the time I reached the window, whoever it was had vanished. But my home office window was cracked open, just slightly but enough to notice. They weren't just watching anymore. They were sending another message. Nowhere was safe. I didn't wait for them to make another move. By dawn, I was executing a plan I'd been formulating since Teresa's revelations. First, I moved all my evidence, both my documentation and Teresa's, to 3 separate secure locations. One set went to Ellie, with instructions to open only if something happened to me. Another went into a safety deposit box at a bank where Julia's financial tentacles couldn't reach. The third I encrypted and sent to James, with a detailed key delivered separately. Next, I reached out to Greg from purchasing, who'd been pushed out months before me. We met at a diner 2 towns over. "I've been waiting for this call," he said grimly after I explained the situation. "I found the same discrepancies. Started asking questions. Next thing I know, I'm being escorted out for violating company policy." "Did they threaten you after?" "Not directly, but my home was broken into a week later, nothing valuable taken, just my laptop and some files." He leaned forward. "I filed a police report, documented everything, never thought it would be useful. But it establishes a pattern," I finished. "Would you be willing to make a statement?" He nodded without hesitation. "Been feeling like a coward for staying quiet this long." By afternoon, I'd connected with 2 more former employees with similar stories. Each had pieces of the puzzle. Departments where numbers didn't add up, projects that disappeared from tracking systems, safety concerns that were buried. James called with news. The federal prosecutor's office was officially interested, but they needed more, particularly about the pension fund manipulation. "We need current financial records," he said. "Without them, Northmere's lawyers will claim the issues were fixed after you left." Teresa was taking an enormous risk just talking to me. Asking her to extract more documents might put her in real danger. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. Patrick. The voice was barely recognizable. Drew? I stepped outside the coffee shop where I'd been working, looking around instinctively. Where are you? Are you okay? Listen carefully. His words were rushed, frightened. The Bentonville contract. Check the testing certification documents against the actual test results. They're putting defective parts in military vehicles. Drew, where are? They threatened my family, said they'd make sure my kids. His voice broke. I'm leaving town, but someone needs to stop them before someone gets killed. The line went dead. Military contracts. Defective parts. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about lives. I called James immediately, relaying Drew's information. His response was immediate. This changes everything. I'm bringing in the Department of Defense. Can you come to my office now? 3 hours later, I sat in a conference room with James and two stern-faced DoD investigators. I laid out everything. The financial fraud, the document manipulation, the pension fund depletion, and now the military contract corruption. We'll need your full cooperation, one investigator said. This investigation will become very visible very quickly. I understand your safety might be compromised. We can arrange protection. I shook my head. I have a better idea. The next morning I called Julia directly. I've been thinking about that severance package, I said, keeping my voice submissive, defeated. I'd like to discuss terms. Wise decision, she replied, poorly concealing her satisfaction. Come to the office tomorrow, 9 a.m. We'll finalize everything. Actually, I countered, I'd prefer somewhere more neutral. The Lakeside Hotel. They have private meeting rooms. She hesitated, then agreed. What she didn't know, the Lakeside was already crawling with federal agents. Rooms wired for recording. Every entrance under surveillance. The trap was set, and Julia was walking right into it. The Lakeside Hotel's Magnolia Room felt unnaturally quiet as Julia reviewed the paperwork I'd brought. Her attorney sat beside her, occasionally whispering in her ear. This all looks in order, she finally said, sliding the non-disclosure agreement across the table. Just sign here, and we can put this unfortunate situation behind us. I looked at the document. 12 pages of legal language designed to silence me forever. Beside it sat the severance check. 5 months' salary for 19 years. Before I sign, I said carefully, I'd like to clarify something. This agreement covers all company matters, correct? Including the pension fund irregularities and the Bentonville military contract? The attorney stiffened. Julia's smile faltered for just a moment. All company matters, she confirmed smoothly. Standard language. I nodded, reached for a pen, then paused. One more question. Does this cover my obligation to report federal crimes I've witnessed? What are you implying? The attorney leaned forward. I'm not implying anything. I stood slowly. I'm stating that I've already provided evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and criminal endangerment to federal authorities, including our conversation right now. On cue, the conference room door opened. James walked in, flanked by FBI agents and DoD investigators. Julia Stokes, one agent said, we have a warrant to search all Northmere Dynamics facilities and seize financial records related to government contracts. Her face drained of color as James placed a thick folder on the table. This is just a fraction of what we have, he said quietly. The rest is being presented to a grand jury as we speak. Julia lunged for her phone, but an agent gently intercepted her. Damon Ellis and the CEO are being detained for questioning simultaneously, he explained, along with several board members. I didn't stay to watch them lead Julia away. My part was done. 6 months after the arrests at the Lakeside Hotel, I stood in the old Northmere manufacturing facility, watching workers on the assembly line. The machines hummed with the same rhythm they had for decades, but everything else had changed. The company had been placed in receivership during the investigation. When the dust settled, a coalition of employees had managed to purchase the manufacturing division with help from a state economic development fund. They'd renamed it Northmere Legacy Manufacturing. They'd asked me to help set up the new financial systems, proper ones, with transparency and accountability built into every level. All done for the day, Mr. Greer? Kyle, the security guard who'd once escorted me out, now nodded respectfully as I signed out at the front desk. Just about, I replied, handing him back my visitor badge. Outside, Ellie waited in her car. "How's it looking in there?" she asked as I settled into the passenger seat. "Good, they've got a solid team. They'll be fine without me checking over their shoulders." I glanced back at the building. Harold would be proud. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. The news had covered the story extensively. Executives arrested, charges filed, plea deals negotiated. The pension funds had been partially recovered. Not everything, but enough that most retirees wouldn't lose their homes. Julia and Damon were awaiting trial. The CEO had turned state's evidence. The story had faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals. "Any regrets?" Ellie asked as we pulled up to my house. I thought about the question carefully. "No," I finally answered. "I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because it was right." That evening, I packed away my files on Northmere. The whole story was documented, preserved, but I no longer needed to carry it with me. Tomorrow, I was starting as a part-time financial ethics consultant for a manufacturing association, helping other companies set up systems that made it harder for the Julias and Damons of the world to manipulate the books. Not a bad final chapter for a 59-year-old accountant who just wanted the numbers to tell the truth.